In the heart of the bustling city of Denver, nestled in a grand apartment on the 28th floor, a story of deceit, danger, and silent protection began to unfold. A tall glass building with floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the mountains beyond, but inside, the peaceful surroundings were a far cry from the sinister events taking place. Samantha and Noah Wilson, a couple in their early 40s, had everything one could wish for: a successful career, a beautiful home, and a young son, Luke, just a year old. The Wilsons were both corporate lawyers with demanding jobs that kept them away from home for long hours. To balance their careers and their newfound parenthood, they hired a nanny, Emily, a young woman in her 20s who seemed perfect for the role. She had glowing references, a sweet demeanor, and a polished resume that made her seem like the ideal choice to care for their precious child. But there was one detail that Samantha and Noah overlooked, a detail that would soon become their biggest mistake. Their pet parrot, Jet, a colorful bird with a sharp mind, had been part of their family long before Luke was born. Jet was known for his intelligence, far beyond the average parrot. Samantha had always joked that Jet could understand her better than most people. He had a knack for mimicking not only words but emotions, picking up on the subtleties of human interactions that others might miss. Jet had a special bond with Luke. The little boy would laugh and squeal whenever Jet flapped his wings or chirped his favorite tunes. But it wasn't just Luke who caught Jet's attention, it was Emily, the nanny. At first, Jet seemed indifferent to her presence. He would watch her move about the apartment, humming softly to himself. But as the days went by, Jet began to notice something strange. Emily's behavior changed the moment Samantha and Noah left for work. Her gentle touch with Luke turned forceful. She would scold him when he cried, her voice becoming cold and harsh, something Jet had never heard when Samantha or Noah were around. Luke, for reasons Jet couldn't understand, began to cry more often when Emily entered the room. The little boy seemed to sense something was wrong. As the days turned into weeks, Jet became increasingly agitated. The routine was the same: Emily would sing lullabies and cuddle Luke when Samantha and Noah were home. But as soon as they left, everything changed. Emily's demeanor would shift. Her smiles would fade, replaced with an almost mechanical kindness, as if she was merely going through the motions. And there were the whispers at night, quiet conversations she would have when she thought no one was listening. One evening, Jet overheard Emily speaking on the phone while pacing near his cage. The bird's keen hearing caught the words that would change everything. "Once I have access to their accounts, I'll make sure no one suspects anything," Emily whispered into the phone, her voice low and cold. "I'll make the baby sick, just enough to get their attention, but not enough to raise suspicion. And when the time comes, they'll be too distracted by their poor, sick child to notice the money disappearing." Jet's heart raced. This wasn't just bad behavior, it was a plan, a well-thought-out scheme to harm Luke and take everything from the Wilsons. But how could a bird communicate this to his owners? How could he make them understand that the woman they trusted with their son was planning something terrible? Night after night, Jet tried to warn them. He squawked, flapped his wings, and repeated phrases like "bad lady" and "help Luke," but Samantha and Noah thought he was merely mimicking random words. Their dismissal only fueled Jet's determination. He had to find a way to stop Emily, to save Luke before it was too late. One evening, Jet noticed something that made his feathers ruffle with anxiety. Emily was preparing Luke's bottle for bedtime, but this time, her movements were different. She seemed more deliberate, more calculating as she added something to the milk, a dark, viscous liquid that didn't belong. Jet's instincts screamed that this was wrong. He had seen this before, heard the same whispered threats. He couldn't let Emily succeed. But how could a parrot stop her? As the night fell, Jet stayed alert, his eyes never leaving Emily's every move. He had to wait for the right moment. And then, it happened. The next morning, as Emily prepared Luke's breakfast, Jet saw his chance. The moment she approached Luke with the bottle of dark liquid in her hands, Jet shrieked at the top of his lungs. "Bad lady! Poison!" The parrot flapped his wings furiously, his voice cutting through the air like a warning siren. Emily froze. The bottle slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. Jet's heart pounded as he watched the pieces of glass scatter, the dark liquid seeping across the kitchen floor. Emily's face twisted with rage as she turned toward the cage. "You've been watching me too closely, haven't you, bird?" she hissed. "Well, we'll have to do something about that." But before she could reach for him, the front door opened. Alice, Samantha's sister, walked in, her voice cheerful as she greeted the household. The sudden interruption gave Jet a moment of hope. "Everything's fine, Alice," Emily said, forcing a smile and quickly shoving the broken bottle under the cabinet, hiding the evidence. "Just a little kitchen accident." Alice didn't seem convinced. She noticed Luke's distressed cries and the strange tension in the air. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "It's nothing," Emily replied, her voice sweet once again, but there was something off about her tone. "Just a little fussiness from Luke. He's fine." But Jet wasn't fooled. He knew that this was just the beginning of Emily's plan, and he wasn't going to let her succeed. The days following the incident in the kitchen were tense. Emily continued to act as if nothing had happened, carefully maintaining her role as the loving nanny when Samantha and Noah were home. But Jet knew the truth. He could see the cracks in Emily's facade, and the bird's vigilance never wavered. Luke seemed to sense the change too. The little boy cried more frequently when Emily approached, his tiny hands pushing away from her touch, as if seeking the safety of someone who would never hurt him. It wasn't just the abuse that troubled Jet, it was the plans he had overheard. Late-night phone calls, whispered conversations that dripped with malice and calculation. Emily was playing a dangerous game, and Jet couldn't allow it to continue. One evening, while Samantha and Noah were out at a business dinner, Jet caught another conversation. This time, Emily was pacing near the cage, speaking in hushed tones, unaware that Jet could hear every word. "The Wilsons are so naive," Emily sneered, her voice sharp and venomous. "They don't know a thing. I'll make sure this works. They won't even know what hit them." Jet flapped his wings, trying to get her attention, but Emily was too focused on her scheme to notice. She was talking about the money, about their bank accounts, and the way she was going to slowly poison Luke. "I'll start with small doses, just enough to make him seem sick. Enough to worry them but not enough to cause real harm. By the time they figure it out, I'll have taken everything. It'll be easy." She laughed coldly, the sound sending a chill down Jet's spine. The bird could hardly contain his fury. His instincts told him that Emily's plans were far more sinister than he could have imagined. He had to warn the Wilsons, but every time he tried, they dismissed him as just another parrot. The next morning, the tension in the apartment was palpable. Jet's feathers ruffled as he observed Emily's every move. He knew the plan was progressing, but he couldn't figure out how to stop her. He tried again, squawking out his warnings, hoping someone would listen. "Bad lady! Poison!" he screeched, but his cries fell on deaf ears as Noah and Samantha continued to go about their morning routines, oblivious to the impending danger. It was then that Jet noticed something else. A small, black notebook had fallen from Emily's pocket, landing quietly under the kitchen table. Jet's sharp eyes locked onto it, recognizing the importance of this unexpected clue. The notebook was a record, a detailed catalog of the Wilsons' lives, their schedules, their routines, their finances. Jet didn't need to understand the words inside to know it was part of Emily's plan. His sharp beak clicked anxiously as he considered his options. Emily had become more careful, more aware of her surroundings. Jet couldn't risk getting caught again, not when they were so close to discovering everything. But how could he make someone listen? The bird's eyes flicked toward Bella, Alice's young daughter, who had been visiting with her mother. Bella had always been kind to Jet, offering him bits of food and whispering secrets to him when no one was around. She was still young, but there was something in her eyes that Jet trusted. Maybe, just maybe, she could understand what he was trying to say. Jet's instincts were right. Bella had always been curious, paying close attention to the world around her. As she walked over to Jet's cage, she noticed the notebook on the floor. Without hesitation, she picked it up, her small fingers flipping through the pages. Her innocent eyes scanned the notes, unaware of the storm brewing around her. "Look, Jet," Bella whispered, "what's this?" Jet didn't need to answer her question directly. He squawked again, more urgently this time. "Bad lady. Poison. Look." He pointed his beak toward the notebook, urging her to look closer. Bella's brows furrowed as she studied the notes, her young mind piecing together the puzzle. She didn't fully understand everything, but she knew that something was very wrong. Her eyes darted back to Emily, who was now in the kitchen, preparing Luke's bottle. Bella noticed how Emily's movements had become stiff and mechanical, and how she seemed to be trying to hide her true intentions. With a sudden realization, Bella turned toward the kitchen door and called out softly, "Aunt Samantha, Aunt Noah, I think something's wrong." But just as she spoke, Emily turned sharply, her eyes narrowing. Her calm demeanor evaporated, replaced by an icy coldness. "Bella," Emily said, her voice low, "you shouldn't be snooping around. Come here." Before Bella could respond, Emily grabbed Luke from his high chair, forcing him into her arms with unnatural strength. Luke's cries grew louder, and for the first time, Bella could see the marks on his tiny arms, bruises where Emily had gripped him too tightly. She instinctively stepped back, horrified by what she saw. "Aunt Samantha," Bella called again, her voice shaking. Something's wrong with Emily. But Emily wasn't having it. She shot a glance toward the notebook in Bella's hands, her eyes flashing with an unreadable expression. "Give me that," Emily hissed. "That's private." Before Bella could react, Alice appeared in the doorway. She had noticed the tension in the room, the way Bella was holding the notebook, and the fear in her eyes. She stepped in, her protective instincts taking over. "Is everything okay?" Alice asked, her voice full of concern. Emily quickly tried to regain her composure, but it was too late. Bella's innocent observation had cracked the facade. Samantha and Noah would have to know the truth, and Jet knew that time was running out. The tension in the apartment was unbearable. Jet's sharp eyes flicked back and forth, analyzing the room, the people in it, and the danger that lurked beneath the surface. Emily had grown more wary, more careful, but the cracks in her facade were starting to show. Bella's discovery of the notebook was a pivotal moment, one that could not be ignored. Yet, despite the mounting evidence, no one had yet fully understood the depth of the danger. Samantha and Noah returned home late that evening, exhausted from a long day at work. They entered their apartment with little suspicion, oblivious to the fact that their son's life had almost been threatened. Jet's anxiety was palpable as he watched them greet Luke, the little boy who was blissfully unaware of the peril that had been so close to consuming him. "Mommy. Daddy." Luke cooed, his small hands reaching for his parents. His innocent smile filled the room, but Jet couldn't ignore the sense of urgency that gripped him. Emily had been planning her next move, and it was only a matter of time before she acted. Samantha looked at her phone, reviewing emails and preparing for another busy day tomorrow, while Noah checked in with the nanny to make sure everything was in order. Emily's behavior was almost unnervingly perfect as she smiled and reassured them that all was well. But Jet could see the change. The coldness in Emily's eyes had grown sharper, more predatory. He had no doubt that she was waiting for the right moment to strike. It was then that Bella spoke up. "Aunt Samantha, Aunt Noah," she said, her voice trembling with uncertainty, "I found something. Something in Emily's notebook." The words sent a jolt through Jet's feathers. He had been waiting for someone to speak out, to take action, and now it was happening. But would it be enough? Would they believe Bella? The bird had watched enough times to know how easily people dismissed the warnings of others. Still, he couldn't stay silent. He needed to act. "What do you mean, Bella?" Samantha asked, looking up from her phone. Her voice was calm but laced with concern. She had always trusted her sister's daughter, but the words Bella had spoken seemed to carry an unfamiliar weight. Bella hesitated for a moment before handing over the notebook. "This," she said softly, "I found it under the table. It's Emily's. I think she's planning something bad." Samantha took the notebook cautiously, flipping through the pages. The moment her eyes landed on the notes, she froze. The words were disturbing. The calculations, the meticulous planning, the schedules, it all pointed to one terrifying conclusion. Emily wasn't just a bad nanny, she was planning to hurt Luke, to make him sick, and to use his suffering to steal from them. The thought struck Samantha like a bolt of lightning, and in that instant, the calm facade of her life shattered. Noah's brow furrowed as he read the notes. This is serious," he muttered, his voice low and controlled, but his anger was unmistakable. He glanced at Emily, who was standing across the room, her hands shaking as she tried to maintain her composure. But the fear in her eyes betrayed her, and Jet could see it. She knew she was caught. "How long have you been planning this?" Noah demanded, his voice rising. "How long have you been hurting my son?" Emily's lips tightened into a grimace, but she remained silent. She was cornered, her carefully constructed life falling apart before her. She knew there was no way out now, but that didn't mean she was ready to give up. The smile she had once worn was replaced by a cold, calculating look, one that made Jet's feathers stand on end. Emily wasn't just guilty, she was dangerous. "I think it's time we call the police," Samantha said, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and resolve. She took out her phone and dialed, her hands trembling as she explained the situation to the authorities. Her heart raced as she spoke, realizing just how close they had come to losing Luke. The thought was unbearable. As Samantha spoke to the police, Emily's eyes flicked toward the door. Her expression shifted from fear to something more sinister, something Jet had seen before. It was the look of someone with a plan, someone who wasn't done yet. Without warning, Emily lunged toward the kitchen. She reached for the drawer where she had hidden the remaining vials of medication, the ones she had been using to poison Luke slowly. But Jet was quicker. The moment she made her move, Jet screeched, flapping his wings violently. "Bad lady! Poison," he cried, his voice loud and desperate. The sudden outburst startled Emily. She spun around, her face twisted in rage. "Shut up, you stupid bird," she shouted, her voice harsh as she advanced toward Jet's cage. The bird could see the fury in her eyes. She had been caught, and now she would do whatever it took to protect herself. But just as Emily reached the cage, a loud knock echoed through the apartment. The police had arrived. Emily froze. The sound of the door opening sent a chill through her, and in that moment, everything changed. The police entered, their presence commanding the room as they assessed the situation. Emily tried to back away, but it was too late. The truth was out. Her plans had been exposed. "I'm afraid you're under arrest," one of the officers said, his voice firm. He moved toward Emily, who was now visibly trembling. Her carefully crafted demeanor had cracked, revealing the true extent of her malevolent nature. As the officers handcuffed Emily, Jet's anxiety didn't subside. He had saved Luke from the immediate threat, but something told him that this wasn't over. Emily wasn't working alone. There was more to the story, and Jet's instincts told him that the worst was yet to come. The apartment felt colder than it ever had. Even with the police presence and the sense of security they brought, Jet remained on edge. His instincts screamed that the worst was far from over, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking in the shadows, something much bigger than Emily. As the officers led Emily out of the apartment, she shot one last cold, calculating glance at the family. It was a look that sent chills down Samantha's spine, a silent promise that things weren't over, no matter how much the situation seemed to be under control. Jet had been the one to warn them. He had been the protector, the watchful sentinel who had kept his beady eyes on Emily, and now, as he flapped his wings and squawked, the truth was finally exposed. But deep inside, he knew, there was more to this story than anyone realized. Samantha, Noah, and Bella watched as the police conducted their final sweep of the apartment. Their eyes darted around, processing everything that had just unfolded. The weight of the situation was starting to sink in. "I can't believe it," Samantha murmured, wiping a tear from her cheek. She looked at Luke, who was still nestled in her arms, blissfully unaware of the danger he had narrowly escaped. "How could we have missed all the signs? She had been with us for months, taking care of him, and we never saw it." Noah placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You trusted her," he said softly. "You didn't have any reason not to. We all did. But we'll make sure this never happens again. And we owe a huge thanks to Jet. If it wasn't for him." Samantha smiled weakly at the bird in his cage, perched calmly despite the chaos that had just erupted. Jet had been the first to sense something was wrong. He had been the one to catch the subtle changes in Emily's demeanor, the hushed conversations, and the eerie silence whenever the baby cried. He had watched everything. And in the end, he had saved Luke's life. But as the officers cleared the apartment and Samantha began to calm Luke down, Jet's gaze remained fixed on the window, watching the shadows grow darker outside. He wasn't ready to relax. His feathers stood on end, his instincts prickling with unease. The police, having taken Emily into custody, began to search the apartment more thoroughly. It didn't take long before they found something hidden deep inside one of the cabinets, a small, black burner phone. It had been tucked away inside a pile of old paperwork, its presence unnoticed by anyone. "This doesn't make sense," one of the officers said as he examined the phone. "She couldn't have been working alone. This phone must have been used for something." Samantha's heart sank. She had suspected as much, but hearing the officer confirm it brought a cold wave of dread over her. "Who else is involved?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The officer shrugged, his face grim. "We'll need to track the phone's activity. It could lead to a bigger operation." Emily was just one piece of this puzzle. Jet's eyes followed the officer as he walked past him, still unsettled. He knew the danger wasn't over. He could feel it deep inside. The presence of the phone confirmed it. There were others involved in this sinister web, and they wouldn't just walk away quietly. Meanwhile, as the investigation continued, Bella sat on the couch with Jet beside her, quietly flipping through the pages of her diary. She had been writing everything down, every odd behavior, every strange occurrence, and all of Jet's warnings. The diary had become a crucial piece of evidence, one that had helped uncover the truth about Emily's plans. Bella had never imagined that her simple observations could have saved her family, but now, the weight of the situation was dawning on her. "I never thought about how much I could help," Bella said, her voice small. "Jet always said things, and I started writing them down, just like Mom taught me. But now, it feels like I was part of something much bigger." "You were," Samantha said, kneeling beside her. "You helped us uncover the truth. You listened when Jet spoke, and you didn't ignore the signs. You were brave, Bella. You did the right thing." But despite her mother's praise, Bella couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She had helped uncover Emily's role in the plot, but there were still so many unanswered questions. What if the phone led to something more dangerous? What if Emily had an accomplice waiting to strike? As the night wore on, the Wilsons stayed in their apartment, waiting for news from the police. Jet remained vigilant, perched by the window, his eyes scanning every corner of the city below. The wind had picked up, and a low rumble of thunder echoed through the air. Something was brewing. Noah sat at the table, reviewing the police report, while Samantha paced nervously, her mind racing with thoughts of their next steps. Luke had finally fallen asleep in her arms, the exhaustion of the evening wearing on him, but for Samantha, sleep was impossible. She had a gnawing feeling in her stomach, a sense of unease that refused to leave. Jet's wings fluttered as he looked out the window, a soft chirp escaping his beak. The bird's behavior had become more frantic, more intense. He could sense the danger drawing closer. The shadows outside were not just the nightfall, they were a warning, a sign that the storm was about to hit. Suddenly, the phone in Noah's hand buzzed. The display showed an unknown number, but the voice on the other end sent a shiver down his spine. "We know what you found," the voice said coldly. "And we know what you're doing. You can't stop us. We're everywhere. Watch your back." Before Noah could respond, the line went dead. Samantha and Noah exchanged horrified glances. The phone call confirmed their worst fear: there was more to this than just Emily. Someone was watching them. Someone who knew their every move. Jet's feathers ruffled in response. The bird squawked loudly, his wings flapping wildly. "They're coming. They're coming," he warned, his voice loud and urgent. Samantha and Noah rushed to the window, their hearts pounding in fear. Outside, the shadows seemed to move, flickering beneath the streetlights. The wind howled through the trees as a new threat closed in on their family. The air inside the apartment was thick with tension. The phone call from the mysterious voice had left Noah and Samantha rattled, their sense of safety shattered. Jet's warnings only intensified, and with each passing moment, the feeling that something terrible was about to happen grew stronger. They had been warned that Emily wasn't working alone, but now, with the cryptic message hanging in the air, it was clear, the threat was much greater than they had realized. Noah and Samantha exchanged a look of mutual determination. "We need to get out of here," Samantha said, her voice tight with fear. But even as she said the words, something in her heart told her that leaving wouldn't be enough. The people behind Emily had their sights set on the Wilson family, and there was no escape from what was coming. Jet's screech pierced the silence, his wings flapping frantically as he bounced on his perch. The bird's distress was palpable, his every movement more agitated than before. "They're coming. They're coming," he cried out in warning, his voice more frantic with each passing second. Noah quickly grabbed the phone to contact the police, but as he dialed, the lights in the apartment flickered. The air seemed to grow colder, and the low hum of static filled the room, making everything feel off. They were no longer alone. "Get Luke," Samantha ordered, rushing to gather their son. "We need to move, now." The urgency in her voice was undeniable, but as she turned to reach for the baby, the front door swung open with a deafening crash. Standing in the doorway was a figure, a tall man wearing dark clothing, his face obscured by a black mask. Behind him, two others followed, their movements swift and calculated. They were here. "Mom! Dad!" Bella screamed, her voice trembling with fear. She instinctively ran to her parents, clinging to them as the intruders stepped into the apartment. Jet's wings flared out in defiance, and he squawked loudly, "Bad men! Bad men!" His sharp voice filled the room, a final plea for help. The intruders paused, momentarily distracted by the bird's outburst. "Shut that bird up," one of the men growled. His eyes, cold and calculating, locked onto Jet's cage, and a wicked smile crept across his face. He wasn't concerned about the bird, it was clear that his focus was on something much more valuable, the Wilson family. "We don't want any trouble," Noah said, his voice steady but his heart pounding. "What do you want?" The man laughed darkly, stepping further into the apartment. "It's too late for that," he said. "You've seen too much. You were supposed to be quiet, stay out of the way while we worked. But now it's time for the cleanup." Jet's mind raced. He could feel the weight of the situation. These men were part of the larger network Emily had been working with. They had been planning this all along, and now their actions were coming to fruition. They weren't just after the money, they were after control. They needed to silence the Wilsons, to erase everything. In that instant, Jet made a decision. The bird had always been a silent protector, watching, waiting for the right moment to act. But now, the time had come to put everything on the line. This wasn't just about warning his family, it was about stopping these men before they could hurt anyone else. Jet launched himself from his perch, soaring through the air with a fierce cry. His wings beat loudly, and his sharp beak sliced through the air as he dived toward the nearest man, who had been eyeing Luke with a malicious grin. The intruder barely had time to react as Jet collided with his face, claws extended. The man stumbled back, his hand swatting at the bird in desperation. But Jet wasn't done yet. He flew higher, circling around the intruders, his screeches echoing through the room. "Get him off me," the man shouted, panic rising in his voice as Jet continued his relentless attack. The other two intruders rushed to grab Jet, but the bird was too quick. He darted between them, his movements fluid and sharp, keeping them off balance and distracted. The chaos gave Noah and Samantha the opening they needed. "Bella, get Luke and head to the bathroom," Samantha commanded. "Now." Noah, his heart racing, grabbed the nearest object, a heavy lamp, and swung it at one of the men, knocking him off balance. The force of the blow sent the man crashing into the wall. But there was no time to celebrate the small victory. The second intruder was already on the move. Before he could reach them, however, Jet had a plan. The bird, still in the air, turned sharply and flew straight toward the ceiling. The sharp crack of glass filled the room as he broke through a light fixture, sending shards of glass raining down on the intruders below. The distraction was enough to give Noah and Samantha the chance to subdue the man who had been advancing on them. The story of Jet the Parrot and the Wilson family teaches us the invaluable lesson of vigilance and trust. In a world where trust is often placed in the hands of strangers, the story reminds us that we must stay alert to subtle changes in behavior and never ignore our instincts. Just like Jet, who was able to sense danger and warn his family, we must be aware of the signs around us and act when something feels wrong. The bond between Jet and the Wilsons also highlights the importance of paying attention to those who care for us, whether human or animal. In real life, this translates into taking responsibility for our safety and the well-being of our loved ones. It also reinforces the need for thorough vetting and communication, especially when hiring caretakers or allowing others into our homes, ensuring that we are never blinded by appearances alone. In the chaos that followed, the police arrived, flooding the apartment with officers who quickly apprehended the intruders. Their swift response, coupled with Jet's unrelenting defense, had saved the family from what could have been a much worse fate. As the last of the intruders was taken away, Samantha breathed a sigh of relief. The apartment was still in disarray, but at least they were safe. Bella held Luke tightly, her small hands trembling as she looked up at her parents. Jet, perched proudly on his cage, watched the scene unfold. His job wasn't finished, though. There was still much to uncover, much to bring to light. But for now, the immediate danger had passed. One of the officers walked up to Samantha and Noah, his face grave. "We've got everything under control," he said, his voice low. "But I need to tell you something. These men, they're part of a much larger operation. Emily was just one small piece of the puzzle. You're not the only targets. This network has been targeting wealthy families for years, and it's only a matter of time before they regroup." Samantha's heart sank. The threat wasn't gone. But at least, for now, they were safe. They owed their lives to Jet, who had kept watch over them when no one else could see the danger. The bird had been their silent hero. Later that evening, as the Wilsons gathered in their living room, Jet sat contentedly on his perch, his eyes still sharp, scanning every corner of the room. He had done his job, and he had protected his family. The love and gratitude they felt for him were unspoken but deeply felt. Jet's journey as their protector wasn't over yet. There were still whispers in the dark corners of the city, and the network Emily had been a part of was far from dismantled. But one thing was certain: as long as Jet was around, the Wilson family would never face danger alone.